quiet, keep quiet. What do you know? That's what we're always told. You won't blame the child if he grows up not being able to express himself. In Africa, it is known that its culture and tradition grooms a particular young one on how they want him or her to grow. However, it places a kind of dominance, restricting his or her imagination and abilities. Oh, I can see you looking at my cap. Oh, yeah. This is from Kenya, this is from Uganda, and the skirt is from Ghana. Yes, as I was saying, it's very common in Africa. Yes, we are excluded when it comes to decision making. Not to forget the gender inequality. You know, in some parts of Africa, women are not able to own lands. Women are not given the voice. They are restricted to the kitchen. They are restricted to household chores. Worst of it all, not being able to partake in education. Like, this is uncalled for. Don't forget you're watching Be With Adult and ISA. Bisa, be inspired with stories from Africa. And this is your favorite host, Betty Osei Bunsu. Today, our focus is on youth. Youth engagement in the aspect of environment and their future in general. Who are youth? A time in your life where you're between your adulthood and your childhood. And that is what they categorize as youth. And in Africa, do you know that 60% of Africans are youth? Oh my God. If that is so, I'm always told majority carries the vote. Why don't we have the say then? It's something we really have to look at. Let's hear from our audience. Do you think youth are engaged when it comes to climate and environmental affairs?
No, most youth are not involved in climate decision making in Ghana. This is
Why not?
Because most young people are not aware of climate change. Their capacity is low when it comes to climate awareness. And so that is why the Youth Climate Council Ghana has been instituted to coordinate the activities of young people in Ghana when it comes to climate change, and also support them in building their capacity so that they can make significant changes to the climate decision making in the country.
My name is Modesta Lynn, a young climate activist and environmentalist from Kenya. I don't believe that youths are fully engaged in environmental and climate decisions, and this is stemming from communication barriers. There's a communication breakdown when it comes to some of the opportunities for youths to be able to fully participate and engage in climate and environmental decisions. And part of this is seen in late communications made by decision makers to youths to be able to actually engage in such processes. There's also the use of technical languages in regards to some of these decision-making processes and discussions, which limits youth engagement and limits their voices to be heard and put on some of these decisions. Last, there's also the aspect of a lack of diversity in representation of youths when it comes to some of these decision-making processes, which means that most local youths are not able to actually have their voices be a part of these decisions in regards to climate and environmental issues that affect them as well. If we're able to fix communication issues and communication barriers and have formal channels that youths are able to engage in, then we're able to have youths fully participate in climate and environmental decisions.
My view about this, I think most youth are not involved into the climate and environmental decision making, simply because many of our leaders you find in their policy making meetings, in their decision making meetings, they don't involve the young people. Even when they have brought them on board, their views are taken last, and sometimes they're not even considered. So in my own view, I really think the youth have not been put on board, especially in the decision making and also making choices, policy frameworks or policy developments in things related to environment and climate. So they mostly know us for entertainment things and other things, but these crucial things, which is our future, youth are not put on board. I'm Christopher Marvin Tumusime from Uganda. Thank you.
Yes and no. Yes, given the model of organization that's for climate actually is using, I think so in the next future, most youth will be engaged in the climate spaces where we are training most youth in the different schools and communities, preparing them for the climate spaces. So in the next future, I think most youth will be engaged if the model continues the same way. no, because currently there is limited access to the platforms and decision-making spaces. My name is Kakolenka from Girls for Climate Action.
According to a quote by Jabril Ibrahim, who we'll be hearing from, he said, diverse voices are not only important, but necessary, and diversity of thought and the enrichment it brings to discuss, that is valuable currency. It means not only our leaders should decide our future, but we should all together, youth, women, and our leaders, we should all decide the future that we want. Jabril Ibrahim is a climate champion connector from Kenya. Oh yeah, Kenya. And a United Nations champion. Speaking at the COP26, that is where he made this quote. And he also mentioned that we should include young ones when it comes to decision making and not forget gender equality.
For more on youth engagement now, I want to turn to you. And could you tell us, not just, as you said, it's sort of self-evident why it's important that young people be involved, but from the other perspective, when governments are making decisions, why would you argue that they need to hear the young voices, listen to the young voices? What more can you bring to the table to ensure climate resilience?
Yeah, thanks, Professor Heho. And I grew up in a household full of formidable women, 3 older sisters, my mom, and my quote-unquote boss, Fiona, somewhere in the audience, and especially on Gender Day at COP. So I fully understand the significance of this panel. And I also want to thank BASE and partners for inviting me to participate in the Futures We Want projects and to this panel. But I want to also point out that diverse voices are not only important, but necessary. And diversity of thought and the enrichment it brings to discourse, that's valuable currency. And the last thing I just want to say is that it's very uncomfortable for me to speak at fora like this because it goes against all my natural instincts for me to do advocacy and to communicate so publicly because I have a scientific background. But it's becoming increasingly clear that we all have to sort of speak up because on the other side of the spectrum, the fossil fuel lobbyists are fighting tooth and nail to destroy our future. In 1856, a scientist named Eunice Foote, another formidable woman, did an experiment where she filled an airtight jar with CO2, and she filled another one with oxygen, and she left it out in the sun. And she made an observation that the test tube with CO2 was significantly warmer. So that's 164 years ago. 10 months, 9 days today since a woman warned us of this crisis, and we're still not budging. And a lot of people actually criticize youth about why you're just out on the streets shouting, where are the solutions? But for one, young people are listening to the scientists. That's why they've started climate movements. And that's why we are everywhere. We're on this panel, we're in the audience. And now to really answer your question, so the former Africa Union Youth Envoy, Ms. Ayachebe, used to speak about this concept. It's called intergenerational co-leadership. And that's essential, especially in Africa, because young Africans don't have access to halls of power. We don't have the resourcing. We're not allowed to attain political power. And the most popular segment of African society does not control its future. And that's a concern. And I think it's a concern because Africa's greatest abundant resource is its young people, And these young people can be put to work to address the externalities of climate change. But it has to be structured in a way that being put to work in sort of like a climate course, something like that, has to be structured in a way that it's fair and it's equitable, and those young people have to be paid fair wages for them to live a dignified life. Because young people often have to deal with unpaid work. I've done years of unpaid work, and I'm sure Susan as well, you've done a lot of unpaid work. But to really specify kind of how young people are on the front lines of this crisis, in my home country in Kenya, the National Youth Service, NYS, was one of the first government entities to be deployed to fight the locust invasion in my country. So young people can save us, but they have to be, or we have to be set up to succeed by policymakers reaching out to us. The onus on them to reach out to us and meet us where we are at. And this valuable work must be compensated.
Africa's greatest resources are young people. Oh, yes. He also mentioned that We should include young ones when it comes to decision making and not forget gender equality. Very, very important, I tell you. He said also, young people are listening to the scientists. Why are the leaders not listening to them? That's a question we all have to ask ourselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Jabri Ibrahim and I work for the UN Champions of Climate Action, but I also am the legal focal point at Kenya Environmental Action Network, which is a very youth-led, youth position entity that exists in the nexus between environment, nature, biodiversity, but also increasingly climate. So I'm from Kenya and I live in Nairobi, originally from Nakuru, which is when I grew up, a small town in Kenya that is now, as of now, a city. And in my childhood life, I really have always been sensitive to changes in our natural system. I really grew up thinking trees deserve rights, which is very, some would say, radical position to take, but I really think natural systems have not really been afforded rights by anthropogenic societies for such a long time that now people are actually coming around to the idea that maybe yes, if we respected, we granted rights to natural systems, maybe we would be able to conserve them better as human beings who are, in my position, inherently selfish. So kind of projects I undertake in my community as part of Kenya Environmental Action Network is we try to convene critical conversations but also run ELCOIS. ELCOIS is a engagement mechanism under YANGO, and YANGO is the youth constituency of the UNFCCC. Just kind of ensuring every time there's a COP, we conceptualize the Kenyan youth position on climate, take it to YANGO, who then synthesize it into a global youth statement that features in COP cover decisions. And in terms of what individuals can do to drive change in their communities in terms of climate action, I'm really of the school of thought and of the perspective, kind of really in agreement with that very famous Guardian article that outlined that 100 global companies are responsible for 71% of global emissions. Kind of, there's always kind of huge responsibility on individuals to drive change, which I agree up to a certain point. I think the onus should be placed on huge conglomerates that are emitting this carbon tons of carbon into our atmosphere without any regulation. I think individuals can drive of change, especially African youth who can be actors of change in their societies, kind of innovating within their system. But I also feel that pressure of a youth being asked, what is your $100 million climate solution that incumbent institutions have not been able to conceptualize, and young people are asked to solve these problems. I think they can be part of the solution, but I don't think the onus should only be placed on youth to drive change and to develop the solutions. I think young people can just be, full stop.
Young people, they are the forefront when it comes to climate crisis, and thus they have to be developed, they have to be capacitated. When you are going for war, you put on your bracelet, you put on your armor, you put on whatever you have to put on. We have to equip the young ones because the future is coming, and it's coming for them. Next on an episode, we'll be hearing from a very special person. He is Dr. John Elebo. He'll be recounting with us why he thinks Africa, or why is Africa always regarded as a poor continent? There's something we should always ask ourselves. Why, known with the abundance of natural resources, is still regarded as a poor continent? What can we do? Stay tuned and don't forget to press that subscribe button.